Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, joined by my friend and colleague Connor Evers. Connor, great to chat with you as always. We are coming into the peak of the golf travel season for this year. We've got 4th of July and the Open Championship both right around the corner. Curious, how goes it on your end of things?
DJ, it is a pleasure to be with you today, sir. I appreciate the introduction. Looking forward to talking about Southwest Ireland and part two, but we are recording this actually US Open week. All is good. Looking forward to watching US Open, and the next major will be the Open Championship. So we're looking forward to that. We're expecting quite a few inquiries for golf in England, which we are looking forward to because a lot of those marquee courses, as we talked about, I feel like I'm, beating a dead horse, but at the same token, I can't tell everyone enough that if you're looking to travel next year in 2024, contact as soon as possible, because again, a lot of those marquee courses, there's still some pockets where we can get things in kind of the midst of the summers, but the summer months, I should say, but you can get those still at kind of the off-peak times, but it is difficult right now because availability is tight. So the tee sheets in England are now opening up and going to open up for the rest of the summer for next year as we currently speak. So I'm looking forward to the Open Championship and receiving a few of those inquiries for people wanting to go to England next year. Again, we're mid-June, so we're in the kind of the heat of the travel season, and as you said, DJ, weather's been it's been really good in past episodes, and it's continuing as we speak. So all is good here at H&B HQ.
Yeah, it has been absolutely great to see, our members as they're traveling around. They're always tagging us on social media. If you're doing so right now, do the same at Haversham Baker. But in all those photos, the sun has been the one constant, it seems. I mean, we've got a gent that's traveling right now from San Jose Country Club near Jacksonville, and he's been posting every day, and it's just been one sunny day after another. I should probably not talk too much about it. I feel like I'm going to jinx it. But with that great weather, the courses are getting a little firm, getting a little fast, getting a little baked out in some areas, and should make for a fun Open Championship. Which is to say, if you are traveling this year and you haven't started practicing your bump and run or your lag putting from off the green, now is the time, because you are absolutely going to need that here on your upcoming trip. But before we move on, just a quick shout out to one of our listeners, Troy. Troy sent us some questions on Instagram, and we were happy to give a little insight. And from what we've heard, it helped land him a couple pretty marquee tee times. So, Troy, good on you. Thanks for listening, and hope you're hitting them well in Southwest Ireland. But speaking of Southwest Ireland, that's where we're heading back today for what was originally part two of a two-part episode. And as you and I have been outlining this thing, Connor, we realized that, if we didn't break it up into a third part, this episode was going to be about 90 minutes long, and nobody's got time for that. So we have decided to split it up into three. Today, we are moving a little bit further south. If you haven't listened to part one, we invite you to go back and do so. We're basically working our way from north to south. But the other reason for breaking it up, aside from just the length of the episode, is also because there's more involved in this part of the country. It's not like going to, say, St. Andrews, where you're going to base yourself in town and have all the golf within, say 30 minutes max. You've got some longer drive times. You've got way more touring options, things that are kind of eating up your itinerary. And so that's something that we felt like we needed to address as well, is simply the logistics of this. And Connor, you as one of our expedition planning managers, has to be like doing a jigsaw puzzle down here in Southwest Ireland at times.
Yeah, it definitely can be. It depends on the routing of the trip and what have you. But the courses we talked about, Adair and Lahinch and Dingbeg, it's not so much of a factor up in that area. But once you get a little bit more south, it definitely comes into consideration. A lot of our members and our groups will contact us and they'll ask, hey, trying to do a trip to Great Britain and Ireland, what's the difference between Scotland and Ireland? And I think one of the big factors that stands out is the drive times. And you could do an expedition to St. Andrews in Edinburgh, and the furthest drive you have to one of the golf courses is 40 minutes or 50 minutes or so. I mean, a lot of those are sometimes less than 20, or if you're staying in St. Andrews, you're walking distance. But when it comes to Ireland, and more specifically the Southwest region, the drive times are completely different. They're double, triple, and sometimes quadruple those drive times, or walking distances, if you will, comparatively from St. Andrews to the Southwest area. And I would say on average, with traffic and a few of those different factors, you're going to have around an hour to about an hour and 15-minute drive, depending on what course you're playing in the Southwest region. And that's going from the hotel to the golf course one way. And you also have that coming back. And also, if you're going in those peak months, it could be a little bit longer with traffic. And it's not even just golf traffic, it's just the touring traffic as well. So, I go on and on, but what I'm getting to is it's a big consideration when it comes to this. And we've talked about on past episodes and an episode specifically just for hiring a driver host is you do have that just select allotment of drive times. And if we're driving from, say, Killarney out to Waterville, I mean, it can take up to an hour and a half, and Waterville will be on episode 3, but it can be that long. And if you are going out there playing your golf, coming home, maybe doing a little touring, that's pretty much your allotment of time, and you really don't have too much left, to be frank. So it's just one of those big considerations and factors when it comes to the Southwest area. And we're going to talk about Killarney a little bit more, but I also wanted to mention it is Killarney's great. There's a lot of offerings. Again, we'll talk a little bit about it. But if you are staying in Killarney and you go out and play Waterville and come back to the town of Killarney, and maybe you don't have many driver hours left, you can walk to some of those restaurants and pubs and what have you. So that's the big advantage of staying in Killarney and staying in an area like that where you can walk to dinners at night and to some of those offerings that you can do after your round of golf or after your touring. So it may sound long-winded, but it is a huge factor that if you're listening to this and considering doing an expedition to the Southwest, or honestly just Ireland in general, that's the biggest difference between Scotland and Ireland is the drive times. That is one of, if not the number one difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we touched on, on the episode about driver hosts is that, transportation and logistics, it tends to be one of those things that we don't think about when we're just, planning a trip. Oh, I'm going to go to Paris. Well, how are you going to get from the airport to the hotel and then from the hotel to the Louvre or wherever? Like that's one of those details that we tend to just kind of overlook. And in Southwest Ireland, you cannot overlook this detail because the courses are so far from generally where you're going to be staying. So that is some great insight, and it's definitely something where having an expert in your back pocket really comes in handy, and it can't be overstated. But kind of diving back into our episode here, in part one, we mentioned that we're more or less working our way from north to south in Southwest Ireland. And where we left off on the map last time, Connor, was Ballybunion. Why don't you tell us a little about this one?
Absolutely. So Ballybunion is one of those courses that I recommend you for sure having on your itinerary when going to the Southwest region. But the old course specifically at Ballybunion, actually have two courses, which we'll talk about the other one. But first off, we'll start with the old, is ranked number 24 in the world. And a lot of people know Tom Watson, but Tom Watson said it's his favorite golf course in all of Ireland. So something to keep in consideration there when planning an expedition to the Southwest area. Funny, the opening tee shot, there's actually a cemetery to the right, and DJ actually has a pretty good story that I'm sure he'll enlighten us with afterwards of kind of the cemetery there on the first hole. But other holes throughout the courses that are marquee a little bit more is the 11th. It's a great par 4 and one of the best second shot holes in honestly the world. It's a great hole. The other one is the 15th hole. It's outstanding long par 3. You've got the Atlantic in the background, the backdrop, I should say, of the hole. Very, very cool hole. And, a lot of those those days where it may have a little bit of that prevailing wind into your face, you may even need driver, again, depending on what tee box you're playing from and what have you. But, it's a great hole, great golf course. The whole course is amazing, fantastic. And Ballybunion also has a second course, which is the Cashin course. and also really good for being, if you will, the sister course of the main one, or just a secondary course. We'll call it two different ways there, but and you're also able to take buggies on the caching course. So if, for example, if you have a rival day golf you haven't scheduled, or maybe have an off day planned in the middle, but realizing, hey, we actually just want to play golf, we're not going to tour, that could be a course you may want to add in. Again, with the advantage of having a buggy potentially, keeps your feet strong for the rest of your rounds of golf. I think there's a hole, I think it's seventh or eighth. I think it's the eighth hole on the front nine. I can't remember specifically, but you've got views of the 17th and 18th holes of the old course of Ballybunion as well. So, it's great for being the secondary course. The ninth is really fun. It's a par five that boomerangs from right to left, and if you've got a drawing for right-handed player, tee shot, you can get it down. I think I even had like an 8 or 9 iron into it, so it's fun. It's a fun golf course at the Cashin, but definitely, like I said, recommend going to Ballybunion, and definitely want to play the old course on that itinerary for your Southwest expedition.
If there's anything that I've come to appreciate about you, it's your ability to recall holes and golf shots. I am one of those golfers that the minute I walk off a golf course, I have essentially forgotten every swing. I mean, unless it was something really good that happened,
Yeah.
when you sit around and you reminisce on a round, I've got buddies that they can walk through every shot. My brother in particular, he remembers every shot he's probably ever hit. I can't remember what I hit off the last tee. I mean, it's just remarkable, but Ballybunion is one of those places, though, that it kind of imprints
Mm,
on your
yeah.
brain, the
Yeah.
views and the vistas. You certainly don't forget the first tee. I mean, not only is it a cemetery that's running up the right side, but of course, it's out of bounds.
Mm.
So if you've got any kind of slice going, you're starting off with a pretty nerve-wracking tee shot. But I should warn you to not give up on it. If you've got one that's slicing into the graveyard, don't give up until you are 100% sure it's gone, because every now and then a ball will hit a tombstone and bounce back into the fairway, and apparently the caddies call that a Lazarus because it has come back from the dead. And the other spot you mentioned, the 17th tee in particular, I believe it's the highest point on the golf course. There's a bench up there that has CTH carved into it, and you would think that it's somebody's initials, but it actually stands for closest to heaven, and it's absolutely appropriate. Last time I was there, the sun was going down, and I just sat on that bench and soaked it up, and you should do the same if you happen to catch it, in such conditions. But Valley Bunny is one of those places that, you may not always catch it
Mm.
in that kinda light, but moving a little further south, we are headed now to Tralee Golf Links, and Tralee is perhaps best known as Arnold Palmer's first golf course design in Europe. He and his partner Ed C. Designed it back in the 1980s. And when describing the course, the king famously said, "I may have designed the front nine, but surely God designed the back nine." And that kinda tells you everything you need to know about Tralee. I mean, the back nine is just one showstopper after another. There are a lot of places that we're gonna talk about here in Southwest Ireland that are just designed for great golf by the almighty. Well, Tralee happens to be one of those places. But don't sleep on the front nine, especially these days, because the club has invested a lot of time and money into upgrading the front nine. They've made some changes in particular to, I believe it's the seventh and eighth holes, to really kind of bring some balance between the two nines. And then also you've got the third hole, which a signature hole isn't really something that they have in Ireland, but if there was to be a signature hole at Tralee, it would be the third. It's about 150 yards. The coastline runs hard up the right side and then wraps around the back of the green. Most notably, behind the green, there's an ancient guard tower that's been there for hundreds of years. It now makes a rather unique rain shelter on a not so great day, but just kind of another one of those holes that imprints on the brain, and you certainly don't forget when the round is over. Another thing about Tralee is it's one of those places that you just kind of want to soak up and spend
Mm.
an extra few minutes. We talk a lot about, if you get to these courses and get out of your car or off the coach and play and get back into the car and leave, you have kind of done it wrong, because you have not only missed out on soaking up the view or the camaraderie with your fellow travelers, but also talking with the membership and just enjoying the time. Well, Tralee is one of those great places for that. They recently redid the clubhouse. The food is awesome. If the weather is great, go out on that patio. There's 3 or 4 picnic tables out there. Enjoy a couple pints and just kind of soak it all in because that's really what it's all about. But Connor, Ballybunion and Tralee are more or less the heavy hitters, if you
Mm.
will, in this area. But there's a couple others that shouldn't be missed in this part of Southwest Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely, DJ. And I know we talked about a little bit of driver hours, but and just the driving in general. But give or take, Tralee and Ballybuniyon are going to be about an hour's drive from Killarney out to those golf courses, and a little bit closer, more specifically, is Dooks. Dooks, I think on Google Maps is exactly 35 minutes. Again, give or take, but a little bit closer. Dooks is a very fun links golf course to play. Amazing setting. Our colleague Jen Eccles and her husband Mike were out there this past fall, and Mike had a really great caddy and actually still stays in contact with them, and they really enjoyed it. And it's a great track. Again, great setting throughout the links there. And what's really funny and unique to Dooks is the course is actually home to the Natterjack Toad. Because of that situation, the club actually has their logo as a toad. So it's a really fun logo where if you're in the market for some merchandise in the Southwest Ireland, the toad at Dooks is one that you're going to want to add to your collection there. So the other golf course in the around this area is Killarney Golf and Fish Club. They actually have 2 golf courses there, but the clean course is kind of the main one. They've actually hosted the Irish Open 4 times. And both these courses are parkland. There's a lake to the right, lake kind of passes throughout. There's some water features, throughout the golf course as well that come into factor. I think back to your point, TJ, I drove it and there's like a little pond on the left side of the fairway on the 18th hole and drove it there too. So again, you're not going to have water features throughout some of these other golf courses, the Southwest or just in Great Britain and Ireland, but you will at Killarney Golf and Fish Club. So clean course is great. So if you are again wanting maybe to add gravel to golf, this could be a place to do it as well. So it's a fun track. Again, parkland course, and I think everyone would enjoy it.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, like we've talked about the strength of the golf in this area, where you've got a course like Dukes, which year in and year out, our members come back and they're like, Dukes was the best. I'd never heard of it. And, it wound up being my favorite course because the setting is just incredible. And then, Killarney Golf and Fish, the clean as a 4-time host of the Irish Open, it's not all that often that that type of venue is going to be a course that is sometimes on the outside looking in when it comes to forming an itinerary in Southwest Ireland. So you have nothing but choice when it comes to this part of the country. But the other thing that obviously is found in abundance is the good life, and there's so much of it in Southwest Ireland. I think we could have easily made an episode or 2 just talking about, things off the course. One of my favorite places in Ireland happens to be the Dingle Peninsula. The town of Dingle itself is roughly an hour from Tralee. Great restaurants and pubs out there. Murphy's Ice Cream, the original location is there. If you make it to Dingle, stop into Murphy's, get yourself some sticky toffee pudding.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Whatever's on the menu, just get it. They're all great. Dingle Gin is a newcomer of late and has quickly become our founder Sam Baker's go-to gin. Just a great little town if you've got a day off of golf. But to really do the Dingle Peninsula correctly, you want to, obviously explore the town and whatnot, but continue on and do the Sleehead Drive as well. It adds about an hour to your route, depending on how many times you stop for photos. And you will be stopping for photos because it's just spectacular. Out on the drive, there are some ancient, I think they're called beehives that were built thousands of years ago, and just really great area and a perfect day off situation. if you make the drive out and you're a self-drive trip in particular, you wanna pay attention to your GPS. When I went out there for the first time, it was a sunny day, I had the windows down, I did not turn on my GPS, I had the Foo Fighters going on Spotify, and I got to this fork in the road, and it said, "Dingle to the left and dingle to the right." And I don't know why, I just went right. Well, if I had gone left, that if you're looking at the map, that would have been the southern route that leads out to Dingle, which apparently is a nice leisurely, mostly leisurely drive out to town. But by going right, I instead gave myself this white knuckle, windy mountain road with cliffs off the edge of the car for roughly an hour, and later found out that I was on, ironically, the Connor Pass. I pulled off at the peak, and let me tell you, I had been stressed out making this drive the entire time. Pulled off into this parking lot, and there was a waterfall. So I decide, oh, I'm going to walk up to the top of this waterfall. And I get to the top. There's nobody around except one couple about my age. They're trying to take a selfie. Of course, I offer to take a photo. And naturally, the next question is, where are you from? And it turns out all three of us were from Orlando, Florida. And, I don't know what the odds are of 3 people from the same town meeting at that spot in the world at that moment, but I've never forgotten it. But the view paid off. I mean, it is, like I said, it's white knuckle the whole way. The drive is so intense that if you have a driver host, you're not doing the Connor Pass. The coaches will not get through there, but if you're on a self-drive and you're feeling adventurous, you're forewarned. But Connor, Dingle is great, but, Killarney is another area that can't be missed.
Absolutely. Killarney is a fantastic spot and kind of that main hub, main town that you're going to want to stay in. Again, to play all the great golf and all the touring that we've kind of talked about in and around the area. But when it comes to accommodations, there's a plethora of options when it comes to Killarney. The few that we kind of recommend, there's others, but the kind of the main two is the Killarney Park. Five-star property in and around the area. They've got great different offerings. The nice thing about the Killarney Park is it works for a lot of different groups. It works for all gents groups. It works for all ladies groups. It works for family groups. It works for a mixed group, what have you. So it works for a lot of different options. The other one is the Great Southern, kind of a Victorian style, if you will, hotel from the outside. What's nice about both these offerings and a few others that we have to recommend is your walking distance to everything. So all the great pubs, all the great restaurants, shopping, your walking distance to everything. And again, to kind of our past points on this, if you are, for example, staying in Killarney and well, I'm playing Waterville. We're going to talk about Waterville on part three, the golf course there. But it can be sometimes an hour and a half drive or so, with the traffic and what have you. So 3 hours there, 4 hours year round. I mean, you're pretty limited there when it comes to those driver hour allotments. So what's nice is when you get back to Killarney, you can then go back to your hotel, shower up, head to dinner, and you don't really essentially have to worry about your driver hours because you're walking distance to everything. So which is really good. And in and around the Killarney area, you've also have great touring. So if you have an off day, or maybe you play one of those courses like Dooks, it's a little bit closer and you have a little bit more hours. Your driver host can help with this, but you can take advantage of some of the great scenery around there. You've got the Killarney National Park, Ross Castle, Muckross House, Ladies View, which is also kind of funny and around the Killarney area, depending on where you're, the time of year. But there's a lot of different deer, like wild deer, that are just kind of hanging out and roaming around. So in and around the Killarney National Park, you may find a few there. So which is really unique. And I've stated before, I used to work and live at Adair, so I was in Killarney multiple times. So had some fun nights and what have you in Killarney, as most would. But if you're looking to get a haircut, some people don't think of, but I'd recommend Sean Taffney. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a great place in there. I think I got my haircut 4 or 5 times there too. So if you're in Ireland for a decent amount of time, that's a spot to go that I'd recommend. So Killarney is great overall for everything.
Talk about the ultimate overlooked preparation for a golf trip is, where am I going to get my haircut? But at the same time, when you're over here for, a week, 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, if you're like me, granted, I don't have a whole lot of hair, but I've got to cut what I have to cut, once a week. So that's a great suggestion. But yeah, Killarney is a great little town. It's one of those places that after you've visited it, say once or twice, the charm might start to wear off a little bit, but at the same time, you've never seen it all. Talk with your driver host or your concierge with H&B or your hotel concierge. They're going to be able to recommend, some things for you to see and do that are maybe a little off the beaten path that you haven't experienced before. Because no matter how many times you're in Southwest Ireland, you have not seen it all. And that's, if there's no other message from these episodes, it's that there is just a lot, obviously, because we're having to talk about it 3 different times. But, Connor, at least for this one, I think we've checked all the boxes. Anything you wanna add before we go?
No, I think we have. I mean, as we've said before, the golf and the offerings off the golf course are just so good and so plentiful. And when, for example, we work with groups and maybe they want to take a round off, it's hard for us as planners to figure out that round because the golf is just that good. There's not one that's kind of we can take that one off. It's really good, and I think that's just the benefit of the Southwest. And if you're looking to go to Ireland, this is definitely a spot you may want to start with as first. So Southwest is great, and looking forward to episode 3. Hopefully, the final one with you, DJ. We'll see.
At least for Southwest, it should
Yeah.
be it should be the last one. But, yeah, we covered a couple of big ones here with Ballybunion and Tralee, and there's more to come, in part 3. So we will have that for you soon. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, send them our way. Shoot us an email, golf@haversham.com, or you can DM us on social media. We're covering a lot of ground in these episodes, so anything that we're mentioning, we'll also have linked in the show notes. You can go check those out for anything that you might have missed. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back again soon for part 3. But in the meantime, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.